Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about installing Transformation Advisor 3.0. Transformation Advisor 3.0 is a major release with great new functionality. It allows for roll-up of development costs across the entire workspace, and there's a really great new feature called Common Code Discovery. That means Transformation Advisor can now discover common code across the workspace, even if it is not explicitly declared as common. For information on Common Code Discovery and more besides, please check out our other videos, blogs, and documentation. 3.0 also has some important changes around installation. In this video, I'm going to show you two different installation scenarios on Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform. The first scenario I will show is around installing Transformation Advisor 3.0 as a cluster-wide operator when you already have an existing installation of Transformation Advisor 2.5. The second scenario I'll show you is an installation of Transformation Advisor 3.0 using the single namespace installation mode. The first thing to note about moving to Transformation Advisor 3.0 from an existing 2.5 install is that there is not an automatic upgrade path. So while in the past you may have been used to having your Transformation Advisor on OpenShift automatically update, or maybe you just had to change the subscription channel, for 3.0 things are different. There were a number of reasons behind that in terms of the types of changes that we needed to make in this release that meant that the automatic upgrade was not possible this time. However, once you do have 3.0 installed, you will once again be able to automatically receive future updates without manual intervention. As you can see, I have accessed the Transformation Advisor documentation here, and I'll be using this as a guide as I perform the installations. And I do encourage you to check out the documentation when you're performing these installations yourself. I also want to mention at this point about data migration. So when moving to 3.0 from an existing 2.5 installation, the recommended and the easiest path is that you don't perform a data migration. Instead, uninstall your 2.5 instance, as we'll see in a few minutes, install your 3.0, and then re-upload your data. So re-upload the zip files that were produced by the data collector. If you don't have access to the zips, or if you have too much data to manually re-upload it, then we have produced a data migration guide for you to follow. You can see it's referenced here in the documentation. So please check out that documentation as well as some other videos for more details on that. In the scenarios that I'm going to be demonstrating here, I'm going to be assuming that we are not performing a data migration. So I'm going to navigate to the appropriate section in the documentation, and it's going to guide me through uninstalling 2.5, performing some manual cleanup steps, and then installing 3.0. I'm performing this scenario using the OpenShift UI, and the first step in uninstalling Transformation Advisor 2.5 is to uninstall the Transformation Advisor instance. And to do that, I'm going to go to the OpenShift UI, click on the installed operators. I've got the project set as the project where my instance is installed. I can click into the operator and the Transformation Advisor tab to see my instance, and then simply delete that. The next step is to uninstall the Transformation Advisor operator itself. So I'm going to go back to the OpenShift UI, click on the installed operators. I'm going to change the project here to the OpenShift operators project. And that's because my 2.5 operator was installed as a cluster-wide operator, and cluster-wide operators get installed into the OpenShift operators project. I'm just going to go ahead and uninstall that. And now I'm going to do some manual cleanup by first deleting the custom resource definition for Transformation Advisor. And I'm going to do that by navigating to Home and Search. And in the resources, I'm going to type in CRD to find my custom resource definitions. And I'm looking here for a CRD called TransAdv. You can use the filters to find it, or it should be close to the bottom. And I'm going to delete that. And the next thing I'm going to do is remove the Transformation Advisor secret. Again, I'm going to go back to my UI, and I want to select the project where Transformation Advisor was installed, and search for the secret resource in there. And I should find a secret called Transformation Advisor secret. I'm going to delete that. So this next step is specific to a namespace install. So my 2.5 installation was a cluster-wide operator installation, so this step is not relevant for me. If your 2.5 was a namespace install, then you would need to go ahead and remove the operator group in the namespace that you install the operator. And again, that would be in a similar fashion. You go to search, you try and find the operator group in the resources, and in here you would see an operator group. Like I said, in my case, it was a cluster-wide install, so I don't expect to see one. And finally, you need to clean up storage. So if you've had storage for your 2.5 installation, as you likely have, then you may need to do some cleanup depending on how that storage was configured. So we've got a section in documentation to describe that. And really it depends on the configuration of the persistent volume that you had used for your storage. If that persistent volume had a reclaim policy of retain, then it's necessary to wipe the data manually from that persistent volume. If you don't do this and the persistent volume is reused for your 3.0 installation, which it may be, then your 3.0 installation will not be successful. Okay, so with 2.5 uninstalled and some cleanup tasks performed, we are ready to go ahead and install 3.0. And from this point, you can really just follow the installation documentation for installing 3.0 as normal. There is one note about the custom security context constraint. There is a requirement to have a custom security context constraint for the Transformation Advisor instance, but that will already exist in our system from our 2.5 install, so there's no need to create that in this scenario. If you were installing your 3.0 into a different project than your 2.5 was installed, then you would need to create that. So to install 3.0, I'm going to go back to the OpenShift UI, click on the Operator Hub, and I'm going to look for the IBM Operator Catalog and filter down to find the Transformation Advisor operator. And I'm going to click Install. So on the Install Operator page, I see the update channel is set to 3.0 as I expect. And the installation mode I'm selecting is the all namespaces. So this is going to be a cluster-wide install. And I'm going to click Install there. So Once the operator has finished installation, we can click into the operator and get ready to install our instance of Transformation Advisor. So I'm going to change the project here to a project called TA, where I want to install the instance of TA. And at this point as well, I just want to check back on the documentation and have a look at the manual tasks that may need to be done before I go ahead and install the instance. So if we scroll down to our instructions for creating the instance, we can see there are some cluster administration tasks. And this really revolves around creating that custom security context constraint which I mentioned earlier. So because we've already had a 2.5 install, we don't need to recreate this. It already exists from our 2.5 install. Well, I'll show you what you would do if you did need to create this on a clean install scenario. So it's just a matter of selecting the YAML from the documentation. You can click the plus button to import the YAML to your cluster and click create. You can see in this scenario, as we expected, it's already there, so it doesn't create it. So going back to the installed operators then in the OpenShift UI, having the TA namespace or project selected, I'm ready to create an instance. So I can click the create instance button, select my license, if we look at the persistence for a moment, you will notice that for 3.0 there are two persistence configs required. One is for CouchDB, which we've had in previous versions, and one is for Neo4j, which is the new container in 3.0. And PVC will be created for each of these. And of course, your cluster then is going to need to have a persistent volume in place to support both of those PVCs. If you have dynamic provisioning enabled, then those PVs will be created on the fly for you. Otherwise, you or your storage administrator will need to create those persistent volumes. And you should check out our prereq doc for more details on configuring persistence. So I'm going to click create to create the instance. So after a few moments, we should see that the Transformation Advisor instance is successfully deployed. And we can follow the progress of the pods by clicking on the workloads pods in the navigation. And you'll notice here there's an extra pod for Transformation Advisor 3.0. It's called Neo4j, and that's the graph database that's used to support the Common Code Discovery feature. So after a few minutes, the pods should be up and running, and we can check out the Transformation Advisor UI. And if we click into the What's New page, we should see that we have successfully installed version 3 of Transformation Advisor. So the next scenario I'm going to show you is installing Transformation Advisor 3 in a single namespace. As we'll see in a moment, there is some more work involved in doing a single namespace install over and above what you would have to do for a cluster-wide install. So unless you really want the single namespace install, you should choose the cluster-wide install mode, which is the default. And again, in this installation, we're going to be using the documentation as a guide and a support. And in the installation documentation, we mention about the different types of installation modes available. In this case, we're installing in a specific namespace in the cluster. And also please pay attention to the cluster administration tasks that need to be performed when installing Transformation Advisor. And the tasks are different depending on whether you're doing an all namespaces cluster-wide installation or a single namespace installation. We're doing a single namespace installation here, so we're going to follow these instructions. And the first thing to do is to create a project for the operator and instance to be installed into. So I'm going to do that by clicking on the projects in the navigation and giving the project a name. I'm going to call it MyTA. The next step is to set up the RBAC for the operator, and this allows the cluster administrator to control what the operator is and is not allowed to do on the cluster. So we've got a number of resources here that work together to set up the RBAC, and you can select those resources, that YAML, and import it into your cluster. And what you do need to do here is to change all the occurrences of the TA project placeholder to the actual name of the project that you're installing into. In this case, it's called MyTA. So there are several occurrences of this that we need to replace throughout this YAML. And when that's completed, we can click Create to create all of those resources. And the next task we need to do is simply install the operator. So going back to our OpenShift UI, I'm going to click on the operator hub. I'm going to look for the IBM operator catalog and filter down to find the Transformation Advisor operator and install that. Now in this case, I'm going to change the installation mode to specify a specific namespace on the cluster, and I'm going to select the MyTA namespace and click Install. After a few moments, the operator should have successfully installed, and we are ready to start installing the Transformation Advisor instance. Before I go on and hit the Create Instance button, I'm going to check for any cluster administration tasks that need to be completed before installing the instance. And we do need to create the custom security context constraint. And you can do that by selecting the YAML from the documentation and importing it into your OpenShift UI and clicking Create. And once we've got that security context constraint created, we need to associate that with the namespace or the project that we have installed into. And we need to run an ocadm command in order to do that. So I'm going to grab my login command from the OpenShift UI. So once I've successfully logged in, I'm just going to grab the command from the documentation page and run that command, but first changing the TA project placeholder to the name of the project I'm installing into, MyTA in this case. Okay, and we're done. Now we should be ready to go ahead and install the Transformation Advisor instance. So in the OpenShift UI, I'm going to search for installed operators, and I'm going to create the instance, making sure the project selected is MyTA. I'm going to select the license. Again, I'm turning off persistence for the purposes of this demo, and clicking create. After a few moments, we should see that the instance is successfully deployed. And we can follow the progress of the pods by clicking on the pods in the left navigation. Now we're going to change the project to the project we've installed into. And again, noting the extra pod for TA 3.0 called Neo4j, which is the GraphDB that supports the Common Code Discovery feature. So after a few minutes, we should see that all of the pods are up and running, and we can go and check out the Transformation Advisor 3.0 UI. And if we click into the What's New page, we should see that we've successfully installed Transformation Advisor 3.0.0 into a single namespace. Okay, that concludes my Transformation Advisor 3.0 install demonstration. Thank you for watching.